map has been a very medialized description of the world order. When we're speaking about religion as a factor in religious conflicts, for example, it's one way of. This is another map. I just brought it with me, but it's a description about the size of different religions. Engelhardt, an American religious sociologist, Ronald Engelhardt, he has made this kind of value studies for decades now, and this is one of his maps where he have investigated different values related to religion. Are you familiar with this map as well? You have seen it? No? No? But the idea is here that he has asked different questions about do you believe in God, or what kind of values do you appreciate in life, and so on. And this here he shows that in the very northern up here, up to the right, Sweden is the most secular country in the world, and it has to do with this values of secular rational values and self-expression values. So Sweden then would be the most individualistic and secular country in the world. So all this Protestant Europe belongs to this secular agenda, while in the other corner, traditional values related to survival values. There you would find countries like Zimbabwe, Egypt. Oh, a lot of things have happened in Egypt since 2008, but Algeria, Bangladesh, and so on. So then these countries would be family related with a big recognition in the religious values, and also survival values like food, health, and housing. So this is another way of describing the religious world map and different kind of values. So the Catholic Europe, for example, you find it in the middle, and these are upholding everything because they are in the middle. But you have also, if you, oh no, I don't think. Yeah, but I think it's quite interesting map to have as a kind of starting point for discussing this what you define as religion, because Engelhardt has of course used a particular kind of definition when he that is related to this secular religious value polarization.
What does survival values mean
here? Like you need food for living, and you have it's a poor country. So poor countries they in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, for example, we don't need to think about survival values because we have a welfare society.
But if you go down there to the Islamic countries, those I mentioned are mostly poor, but Turkey is not very poor. And then you have Zambia and Zimbabwe. They are not more poor than any other African country, more or less. So why are not all the African countries there?
No.
You see my point?
Yeah, I see your point.
That's why I was wondering. I can't see what this map really is showing. It's not clear to me, really.
Mm. It's true. It's like, but he means with surveillance, survival values. he means like food, health, and housing, but
It's not all. Then about secular values, you show that Iran is more secular than Jordan. This is amazing too.
yeah. What do you find Iran?
Iran is on the border between, the Islamic and Africa region.
Yeah, is it?
Just below Turkey. Just below Turkey, next to
Yeah, I
Uganda,
see. I see. Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's, yeah. Of course, it's quite strange why the countries are ending up where they are.
Of course, it depends on how you
Yeah.
interpret secularism and
Mm.
all that stuff.
Mm. Mm.
Well, I think one point
Oh,
is...
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
You find some problem with the map? Because I don't. And I find it tremendously interesting because if you place Iran in this context, I can see to the left reasons and science, and it's according to my mind when I look at the Shia Islam. And it's important, for me it's tremendously important. So when I see this figure and Iran placed in this section of the valley, I find the map very good, but I don't know.
I don't really understand what he's trying to show. Where is Saudi, for example?
Saudi, where is that?
Where is it supposed to be on the map?
Oh, you mean that it isn't there? I think
Bangladesh,
he
Pakistan.
didn't cover all the world, so he left some countries for some reason. I don't know.
And
But
how do you decide-
maybe it's a kind of accessibility to do the investigations.
And how can we talk about English-speaking countries as an identity of some sort on the map?
Yeah. I think it really raises a lot of questions, this map. And one has, of course, to do with what are we really investigating, because you could say that if you take Sweden, for example, who is very high up in this right corner, does that mean that family and religion is not at all important, and we don't at all have to struggle with surveillance values? But we have also this discussion about welfare, society, existential issues about how people feel in the society. A lot of oh, sorry, I'm a bit tired in my head. I feel like I'm dropping my words all the time. Yeah. Do you want to say about this map, or shall we continue?
No?
No?
Fine.
Here is the last map I brought, but it's another kind of looking at the world map, and it's an issue about well-being, a map of world happiness, and that will be a rather different way of describing the world. And that is, in Denmark, most people in the world are happy. They are happier there than nowhere else. But we see here that, for example, the Bahamas comes very high, and Bhutan, Brunei also comes very high. So that would be another way of sorting the world. Costa Rica also quite high. Mm.
It's interesting to see Brunei so high on the list, because recently they announced that they are going to take Sharia inside Brunei.
This was
That was before the announcement.
this was 2006. This map was made in 2006.
It's amazing to
yes.
see Norway as number 19. In my opinion, Norway should be number 1,
Yeah.
to be honest. I think
Yes.
we are the most happy people.
Yeah, you they were doing this investigation, so your individual idea wasn't you weren't asked, but
I will follow this.
you weren't asked, but maybe they had to change it. They had asked you,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
you weren't
maybe.
asked in this investigation.
But you never meet the sad Norwegian, do you?
But it's quite amazing that Denmark is most happy. Yeah.
Mm.
But I think it's interesting that also those countries that come in the left corner downstairs, down in the Islamic and traditional survival values, some of them are part of this. That's quite high.
I think it may have to do with the questions, that they are interpreted by us in Europe totally different from those who are living in Muslim countries, in the poor countries where there's a lot of problems, a lot of fighting, or in Africa and other, you know. So I think that it's like when they make an IQ test in the United States, which I've done for so many years, between white and black people, and they always come up with that the black people are not as intelligent as the white are, until the truth comes out that when you ask black people about something which they don't know of, or it's their own country, because they don't live in the white areas, they live in black areas.
Yeah.
So if you had turned the questions around and put the white questions to the black areas, then, or the other way around, you know, I mean, it's very difficult really to find.
Personally, I'm a bit skeptic to this kind of investigations.
Very,
That's why
very
I'm a
skeptical.
philosopher, not a
This
sociologist.
is what I wanted
But
to
it raises questions that how do you? It's a power that you describe the world in some sense as this is a secular country. This is a value related survival values related country, and then of course there is a kind of ideology behind the theory of how you want to describe the world, and so the issues we raises here is a reaction to we don't agree with the description of the map because maybe we have some other kind of questions, and this presentation doesn't say everything, of course, but we need to know what are the questions behind these illustrations, and who are the persons raising the questions, what are the ideological map behind the service and so on. So it's just a way of three different kind of describing how the world works. If we talk about challenges towards religions today, I would say that we are right now in an increasing global mobility between cultures, mostly because of labor immigration, migration, and global communication. And also there are tensions between ideals and values within the project of enlightenment, questioning the authority of science and the new situations by return of the religions in the secular agenda. And also a weakening of the Western secular national states' possibilities to protect freedom of religion at the same time as the same freedom in other parts of the world is restricted and persecution of minorities is a fact. So this map that we saw earlier, this one here, doesn't really fit with this kind of challenges that we are meeting today. There are some possible causes for conflicts, like religions contain truth claims, which do not always harmonize with the human rights and democracy. Religions has another way of describing the world philosophically and existentially, and it's not always possible to harmonize the content of the religions with the concept of the paradigm of human rights and democracy, because religions have in themselves a particular kind of truth claims. And religions is often something more than values, for example, ontological ideas and confessions about ethics. So if democracy by some Western political philosophers today is called what do you call it in English? It's an empty emblem. Emblem, do you say that in English? Ett tomt emblem. An empty emblem. An empty symbol. Democracy is an institution and has a theory about how to organize a state or a society, who should make the laws, or what is justice, what is a safe society, or everything like this. But the development of their democracies cannot come from within the democracies. Some political philosopher says, like for example the Italian philosopher Agamben, or French philosopher Badiou, that kind of tradition, and then they turn in their way, they turn to the religions as atheists. Turn to the religions and try to find energy and some new ideas that will refresh the democracy from within again, because it's like Jacques Derrida and also Jürgen Habermas says that religions has a content of values and ideas that has roots from thousands and thousands of years. And we need the religions within the democracy. It's not that we are all only give passive freedom for religions to exist. They are the energy for democracy, they say. And religions can be both politically progressive and morally conservative. Of course, religions are not just one thing. They can be both of this sort. Religion is a part of a human identity in a deep sense, but is often in a Western secular context regarded only as an oppressive system, particular other kind of religions that are not the majority of religions. I will skip this, I think. It is a quite long discussion about a comparison between the human rights article and the Cairo Declaration. I will also skip this one. Is that clock correct?
No.
No? So what time is it? I don't have any...
It's 5:30.
5:30? Okay. It's almost... Then I know. There was an interesting investigation in Indonesia in regard to that Indonesia is one of the most democratic developed countries during the last decade, on the most democratic, intensive developed country, the Muslim country. And there was a big investigation based on 940 teachers' opinions in 2006, and the result was quite interesting, because there are some complex combinations within the religions, as these value studies showed. Showed that 86% was positive to democracy, and still, if there was so big majority for democracy, there were at the same time 83% who wants the state to introduce Sharia by force for every Muslim. So they wanted to keep this idea about introducing Sharia by force, but still combine it with a democracy. And 93% wants to protect the mass media, and still 80% are positive to free competition between political parties, but 74% wants to force their parliament members to execute their religious duties according to Sharia. So there are very interesting complex combinations. You are saying yes to a democracy, but it's not a Western democracy. It's an own way of interpreting democracy in the Indonesian way. Democracy and civil rights are regarded as compatible with Islam, and there are no significant differences between the public living in the West and the Muslim religious cultures in approval of how democracy works in practice, in support for democratic ideals, and in approving of strong leadership. And one of these researchers who done the study said that many Muslims see democracy and human rights as useful instruments for constraining an otherwise aggressive state or uncivil elements in society. Now, as I understand it, you talk about religious democracies, where you say yes to democracy, but not yes to Western democracy, but you want to accept and built it into the societies. An interesting Muslim researcher, Yvonne Yazbek Haddad, she says that the West is obsessed by liberation of Muslim women from Islam. Are international women's organizations willing to make room for real pluralism? So there are feminist Muslim movements who say yes to democracy and yes to religion. It's not a choice of that believers do not want to be liberated from their religion, but to have access to human rights in combination with the faith. And spokesperson like Yvonne Yazbek Haddad mean that the Western feminist movement, she feel that they force the Muslim congregations to leave their religion and the faith if they want to combine it with a Western way of democracy. And as I see from my point of view, there are many things happening in this area. Outspoken secular feminists Muslim sends traditionalists and Islamists into a defensive mode. So just as this last slide, I believe that access to freedom of thought, conscience and religion is not only a structural question between different religions, but more a struggle of power and interpretation within the religions. And sometimes representatives from different religions make a common cause for particular issues when it comes to customs, confession and the visibility of religions in the public sphere. Europe is not a secular continent, rather a post-secular culture. In the future, we will see many conflicts about the interpretation of faith and identity in relation to democracy and the global world order. Yes. Yeah. Do you have any question?
Yes.
Yes. Or comments?
No, I was going to ask you about that very last phrase. So I think I had a long list in my mind about on facts that prove that Europe is not that secular that is said, and you admit. So I'm going to ask you a philosophical question, if you will. Is it even possible to stand outside religion and judge it? Because in your first part of speech, you distinguished between judging religion theologically from within, or standing outside and studying the religion. You call it science of religion. So is that even possible? I mean, everybody says that Europe is secular, and there is a very long tradition of saying so, especially in countries like Britain and France. But you see religiously judged policies more and more practiced in the society. For example, hijab that you mentioned, it's very difficult to prove that wearing a small scarf would harm society or would be, put the society in an unsafe corner. So it is obviously religious to ban it. It's not only hijab. I remember 10 years ago in France, they talked about Muslim women who refused to see male doctors in the hospital and said, no, this is against laicite. So you cannot choose your doctor. And this is against basic human rights. In any country, you can choose whom to see as a doctor, male, female, specialist, generalist. That's not a question of religion or politics or even society. It's a very personal question. So it's obviously religious. So I'm asking this again, is it even possible to stand outside, because we're all human beings and we are bound in our understanding of the world around us, including religion, including God. Is it even possible to stand outside? I know this is a very old question,
Yeah.
but it's still interesting. And
I think this view of looking at religion as a science of religion, that is a consequence of a positivistic tradition, where you think that you can have, with your reason, you can organize the world and the reality into a kind of map and to structure it, like you have an animal or something, you want to investigate the body, and then you just move out the parts and investigate it medically. And so you think that religion, you could just put it on the table here and you can sort it to different categories and so on. So in one sense I would say yes, it's possible because it is done, but I don't think it's a constructive way of understanding what religion is. It's like saying that you study philosophy as an object from outside. If you want to study philosophy, you must go within the issues of philosophy to understand. Then maybe you want to agree with that philosopher or that philosopher, but you stand in the paradigm of philosophy and discuss this.
Sorry to interrupt. My question is not exactly whether or not you can study religion from outside. I'm speaking about the policy-making aspect of this. Can we, because we're talking about secularism in governance, can we stand outside and judge individuals' actions from a non-religious point of view? Is it even possible? Because we don't see it practiced in Europe, and you just admit it.
But then maybe we need a spokesperson who talk about this is an important custom for us, because it has to do with our identity, and explain to people who don't practice that custom that this is a very basic ground for our understanding our meaning of life, or in a deep sense an existential issue that is very important. and you have to explain that for people who doesn't share that belief or that custom, because I think it's hard for someone else to, from inside a belief, understand what it really means, because some practices can, from the outside, looks quite ridiculous, or what are they doing? They are going around saying hello to a white-bearded man dressed in red and say ho ho, Merry Christmas, and and then you have this custom. This is very, very ridiculous in some way, but if you understand it from within, then you would understand that it's the way of tradition of celebrating Christmas, and so it's similar to other kind of practices and identity issues, and that Habermas has this very good argument about how we have to relate to each other in the public sphere, that we have to use or develop a kind of character, both to speak about our identity, but also to listen to each other. So that is a kind of common understanding of how the democracy has to work, and if we don't do that, then it's a hard case for democracy, because but of course everyone cannot have their rights satisfied. It has to be a valuation all the time. But where do these limits go? Where are the grey zones? Why is particularly religion regarded as a problem? In your example, for example, in France, why is it that religion becomes a matter at all in that kind of issues? Another area that is a grey zone is the people working in the professional lives. If you wear, for example, particular clothes that are related to your religion, can you wear these clothes during your work? Can you work with anything you like? Or are you limited to a particular kind of works because you use, I don't know, a long beard or something? Can you wear that? Yes. So there have been some cases in the European Court of Europe for last year. No, this January this year. It was two women who raising a case against the United Kingdom because they wanted to wear a cross at the workplace, and one worked in British Airways, and she was forbidden to wear her cross because everyone has to wear this uniform, and then they were changing the uniform, so it was a bit open here, and her cross was shown, so she had to move it, but she had the right to wear it according to the European Court. Another woman she also wore a cross, but she worked as a nurse, and then the argument was that it's not hygienic to have a different kind of rings or something. So then she was not right. She had not. She didn't win her case. So there are different reasons for limiting using religious symbols or making different kind of practices.
So do you, in short, do you believe that Sweden is more secular than Swedish society, not government necessarily? Is it more secular than other European countries, nations?
No,
No.
I think this kind of maps they have made this investigation from a very particular kind of regarding religion, and because when you ask you have the answers that you have the questions you raise, you have the answers you. So it's a mirror of that kind of investigation that is made. But I wouldn't say that Sweden is very secular. But I wouldn't either say that Sweden is faithful to a particular religion. If you ask people do you believe, I was participating in a investigation some years ago. We asked one question about, do you believe in God? And that is of course a very common question. And in Sweden there were, I think, if I remember correctly, it was 65% who answered yes. And then we asked, do you believe that Jesus Christ was crucified and on the third day raised from the dead and is the savior of humankind? And 23% said yes. And that we also asked, do you believe that Muhammad was the prophet from God? And there were, I think it was like 20% who said yes. And we were quite amazed about this result. So that this would mean that people who believe in God can say that they both believe in Jesus Christ and Muhammad as the prophet of God, the same people. So I think that maybe the kind of religion and the faith in amongst
Jesus Christ.
I know,
Muhammad.
yeah.
Maybe some of the question people were Muslim.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Yes.
Thank you.
It's all a question of how we define the word secular society.
How we define it?
Yeah.
A secular society? Well,
Yes, I mean
yeah.
in the manner that you put up your question, what do we mean by secular?
Yeah.
If we go to Saudi Arabia, they even have to use a whip
I know. I understand.
to force people to go and pray.
You can share. You can have different. You have to difference between secular and secularism. So secular would be first. This is a way of organizing the state. That you, when you make the law, you shouldn't take particular interest in religious matters or other kind of ideologies. So the making of the law should be as objective and neutral as possible. So that is one description of a secular. But the secular can also be that in the way that religions are, people are not believing in God anymore. That could be a way of describing. But secularism, that would be laïcité in France, for example. Where you are laïcité in France, where you are very aware of a very distinct cut between the public sphere and the religion, and the religion has nothing to do with anything in the public sphere. So you have
in
to
Turkey, they also agree with
yeah.
after Turkey.
But there exciting things are happening in Turkey now.
No,
about it. But so secular and secularism is one difference, and the other is different aspects of what you mean with secular.
Well, if you take the question you had before about the Swedish people who are particularly secular, what's interesting is that in Saudi Arabia you have to use a whip to force people to go and pray. If we take your own country, Iran, as a scholar of Iran, although it's a very small one, but for all the 40, 50 years I've been dealing with Iran, whoever scholar you deal with, you read about it, you talk, you meet Iranians, most of them would say, well, we are not a very religious country, you have to remember that. Still, you are officially one of the few states with a theocratic government, I think. Is that the right word to say?
Theocracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you define religion or religious.
Well, and that's exactly the question, yeah. And that's the answer to your question. You answered it yourself now. And this is what I wanted to get it. It's a very open sort of question, it's a very open sort of answer, in a way. Do you understand what I mean?
I think so. Yeah.
No, I want to know that I have been able to explain myself,
Yeah.
you know.
If anyone is interested and read Swedish, some of you do. So I was participating in this anthology, Religion in Democracy, a political dilemmas, return of a political dilemma. You can look at it if you want. So, thank you for your patience. I feel like my brain is running out of energy.
Thank you very much.
Friday night, end of the week. Yeah.
So if you have a concept that covers everything, is useless. So if religion also covers, for example, atheism, it means that it's useless. So in social sciences, we try to define and then build upon, like try to build a theory or something. So if religion is defined so shallow and so big, we cannot use it as, to analyze.
It's a good point.
Yeah,
That's because all these different kind of ideas about what religion is. Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult. I mean, it's like other concepts. For example, look at globalization. Globalization means everything.
Exactly.
And then religion means everything, so it's very difficult. But if you, for example, focus or limit ourselves to, like as you said, for example, old religions or Abrahamic religions or religions from God or whatever, so maybe it's more, because it's more restricted focus, we can come to some results. But anyhow, as Habermas says, I think that the only way in this world is not secularism or post-secularism or religious or whatever, is that people, if they can understand each other and speak to each other, and they express the views without the political interference. That's the problem in my idea is not religious interference, is the political, is the power. So if we put power aside, so people can understand each other, can talk to each other, then as is a kind of intercultural relationship. So if, for example, all of us sit down around the table and talk, we have more common things than differences. And then if we find out some differences, we can tolerate. Why not? I mean, we have differences because we are created in somehow different ideas or different things. So maybe I don't know what as you refer to Professor Devi, she believes that religion now is becoming after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, religion is becoming more important player in
it's a fascinating development.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Great.